I'd like to welcome Liz Briscoe, the Vice President of our board, to the podium.
Thanks, Marceline. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for supporting Economic Action Maryland and all you doing your work in advocacy. So welcome to Economic Action Maryland Fund's event, Economic Justice in Action, Power and Policy in the Age of Deregulation. And I'm, as Marceline said, Liz Briscoe, Vice President of the Board of Directors. Prior to COVID, the pandemic, Economic Action Maryland held these policy forums to celebrate and strategize with our community. This year, it seemed more important than ever to bring all of us together and do this strategizing. We are also want to celebrate the victories that make Maryland better for working families and honor those legal, legislative, and community champions who have introduced laws that have changed lives for struggling households across the state. In the spirit, I want to recognize my colleagues and fellow board members. If you are here, please stand up and be recognized. Thank you. They volunteer their skills and expertise to strengthen our organization. I also want to thank all our sponsors whose support provides us with funding to advocate for strong consumer protections and broad economic rights. So now it's with pleasure to introduce our very passionate, dedicated Executive Director, Marceline White.
Thanks so much, everybody, and thank you for coming out on a rainy Thursday day to strategize and be together. I think the fact that this room is full exemplifies the realization and the knowledge that we all have that now more than ever we need to come together. And about a year ago in November, we had a celebration in Baltimore City a day or two after the election. And at that point, I spoke about the need to come together, to build community, to be strategic. And since then, well, let's just say it's clearer than ever that we need to work together in Maryland to make progress. I don't need to recount all the things that have happened at the national level, but I do want to say we live in Maryland. We can make progress. We have the opportunity here to defend progress that's been rolled back at the national level and to protect the pockets and pocketbooks of working families across the state. We can pass progressive legislation that builds wealth in formerly redline communities. We can close the racial wealth gap. We can pass reforms that protect consumers and end policies that criminalize poverty. But to make that happen, it's going to take all of us. Every person in this room has a critical role to play for Maryland to make the progress it needs at this moment and to meet this moment effectively. We need community leaders who are organizing and providing direct services in their neighborhoods. We need legal service providers defending clients and preventing evictions and foreclosures. We need consumer attorneys making new case law, winning class actions, and holding back actors accountable. We need policy advocates walking the halls of power and building support for good legislation and stopping bad bills, which we know is half the battle too. We need organizers building individual and collective power to create a movement for economic rights. We need all of these things. And so the goal today is to celebrate those who are leading the way and leading the change we want in Maryland, to learn what we can achieve at the state level, to discuss the impacts that from the federal rollbacks at the state level on our most vulnerable members, and develop and discuss tools we can use to achieve change. But before we start celebrating, a few thanks and logistics. First, Very important, the bathrooms are straight out the door and to the right-hand side. We'll be breaking after this into policy sessions on housing, energy, and debt. Those room numbers are in your program, and they're all on this floor, and there are signs outside the door for those. I'd also like to thank everyone who made this day possible. Can our staff wave who are in the room? Are any of our staff in the room, or are they just, nope, they are busy working. So that tells you everything. Their work speaks for itself. There's information up here that you saw. There's information in the back about our tenant advocacy work, our fair housing program, and our work with older adults. I especially want to thank Jennifer Bevan-Dangle, who I don't think is in here, but is running around, whose organizational skills and logistic skills have made this event so successful. And I want to thank her for making it a family affair and bringing her daughters, Catherine and Alyssa, today here to help us as well. Jennifer Bevan-Dangle, folks. I want to thank and recognize all of the elected officials who are here today and their staff, who we know and depend on each year to pass progressive economic change. We have Delegate Palakovich Carr, who is receiving an award in a little bit, Delegate Terrassa, Delegate Ziegler, Delegate Andre Johnson, who will receive the first award of the day, Delegate Pam Guzzoni, staff from Delegate Atterbury's office, Delegate Von Stewart, and we thank you all, and we depend on all of you to help us each session in the 90 days to make progressive change. All right, so I want to turn to celebration. I think we all need something to celebrate right now, and I think the best thing to do is really recognize those folks in the room who've been leading the way in creating the kind of Maryland we want to live in. And so first, I am going to present our first award winner of the day, which is our up-and-coming Legislator of the Year. That award is presented for legislators who in their first term demonstrate a commitment to economic justice and consumer issues. We are so excited this year to present the award to Delegate Andre Johnson. He's receiving this award for his work on energy transparency and his concern for issues affecting working families. Delegate Johnson sponsored the Ratepayer Freedom Act this year, which prohibits investor-owned utility companies from passing on the cost of their trade association fees and their private jets onto consumers and onto customers. He was dedicated and committed in fighting on this issue, and much of his efforts resulted in much of this legislation being folded into the House and Senate leadership package. I am proud to say Maryland is the 4th state in the country to pass these reforms. In other states, these reforms have resulted in saving ratepayers hundreds of thousands of dollars, which everyone who works with customers who see their BGE bill or their other bills knows is a huge concern for our families, both those struggling paycheck to paycheck and those middle-income folks who aren't expecting $500 utility bills. So we are so pleased to present him with the Up-and-Coming Legislator of the Year award and thank him for his effort. Delegate Johnson.
Well, thank you. This is, I'm a PK, so for everyone in the room here, PK is a preacher's kid. I guess I'm a politician, so I guess I can speak a little bit. But I'm not going to be here, I'm not going to take too much of your time. I'm just going to say 4 years ago. No, but seriously, this is very important to me. It's a privilege to get this award today. I just want to thank you all so very much because it's groups like this that really is the engine that keeps the counterbalance to those folks that want to, as me and my chief of staff were having a debate coming down the road today, of those folks that want to constantly put their hands in people's pockets and pocketbooks and the greed and of people. But this is a particular honor for me because my district is one of those underserved districts that needs groups like this that are fighting day in and day out for economic justice. There's no daylight in between your mission and my mission. There's no daylight in between your passion and my passion. Whatever you all see fit as far as legislation that you all want to push forward, anything that you want to kill, don't hesitate to come to my office, room 311. Don't hesitate to come to my office and have those conversations. My door is always open. I'm always available to you. So once again, thank you so very, very much for everything that you do day in and day out for the people of this great state. So thank you all so very much.
Thank you so much. We are now, I'm thrilled to move to our federal champion of the year. And really, our federal champion needs no introduction, but he's going to get one anyway. So we are so delighted to present our Federal Champion of the Year award to Director Rohit Chopra, who's the third director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I received a very short bio, which shares that Director Chopra led the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau from 2021 to 2025 and served as a commissioner to the Federal Trade Commission from 2018 to 2021. In these roles, he led a slew of efforts to reform practices across the economy that harm consumers and businesses. His work helped to eliminate tens of billions of dollars in junk fees, improve customer service, and ensure accountability for Wall Street, big tech, and other dominant firms in the economy. I will say briefly that SLU is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that bio. If you've known anything about Director Chopra, under his leadership, the CFPB won billions of dollars for consumers, developed important guidance, critical enforcement actions, and research into emerging issues and markets. I had the pleasure of connecting with the CFPB, particularly around the issue of medical debt, which I know Director Chopra is passionate about. And he spearheaded issues at the Bureau and coordinated with other agencies to try to ensure that no one had their credit ruined or their debt mount because they or a loved one fell ill. We are so lucky to have had his leadership over the past few years at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And we're so happy to recognize his extraordinary efforts with this Federal Champion of the Year award. He's going to make a few remarks, and there'll be a little bit of time for Q&A as well. Yes, no, I can be Vanna White.
Well, thank you, Marceline, and thanks to all of the staff and team and supporters of Economic Action. Also, big shout out to all the legislators who have joined today because you all need to be put to work. There is so much that is happening in terms of decay and disarray in Washington right now. There was a campaign, which actually I agreed with this, that the focus needed to be on lowering costs on the rent, on loans, on food, on electricity, and what have we seen every single day is prices have gone up and up and up. We used to talk quite a bit about people being on a treadmill of debt. You all have seen the fights against predatory lending, against student loan companies, against high-cost auto lenders. We saw what happened when predatory lending infected the economy. And here, even in Maryland, which, by the way, was not even hit nearly as bad as other parts of the country, the destruction from subprime mortgage lending destroyed trillions of dollars of wealth across the country. I hope all of you always remember, when you see the stories of Prince George's County especially, since the 1960s, there was a dramatic closure of the racial wealth gap because of housing. It was steady. There was more and more wealth built, more and more reversing of the history of redlining. But within 2 years, over 30 years of gains disappeared. That's because there was an epidemic of predatory mortgage lending. So I just hope that we are constantly keeping in mind how much we have to push back when these things start to infect all of our communities. So let me just say a couple words, Marceline, about the things I hope that Maryland really becomes fixated on. And these are really things that I know Marceline has been fixated on already, but it's important for us to think about how we're going to do it together. So the first thing I just want to talk briefly about is these crazy high electricity bills. We are seeing more and more people facing this shock of a bill every day. And what is actually happening, please don't forget this, they then start having to sacrifice on other items. And then if they fall behind, it enters into this loop of debt collection, credit reporting, and sometimes even lawsuits. And here's what I see to the delegates and everything. Here's what I'm seeing in counties and cities and states. They are handing out giant tax incentives to big data centers that employ 2 or 3 people day to day, and they are taxing the electricity grid so much. And in places like Virginia and other states, it is the rest of ratepayers that are subsidizing Mark Zuckerberg and these big tech companies. And it is very important that you quickly respond to how these utilities are passing on costs. I love this private jet exclusion. And the reason why this is so important, these utilities are compensated based on their costs. They get a return on their investment, but when they throw away money on lobbying and other expenditures like this, who pays for it? The rest of us. So I just want to commend you again for pushing on this, because there is so much more to do when it comes to these electricity bills. So I hope that each of us can really talk about this with people, no matter who they voted for, no matter if they've ever voted in the past. It is something that is on the minds of more and more people. Let me also add on the issue of housing. So everyone realizes that the cost of housing is out of control. We have to be on the lookout for people who think that deregulation is the answer. Study after study has shown that deregulation when it comes to housing, yeah, maybe there's places where you can streamline the process, where you can get permits or build more quickly. But what we often see with some of this deregulation, guess what types of homes end up being built? Not homes for families just starting out, not homes for people who are just out of college, not homes for seniors who are trying to have an affordable place. Most of that new market rate housing from deregulation only serves those at the top. So you all need to come up with more ideas to be able to make sure that homes not just are built, but they are not squatted on by investors who scoop up all of the new properties being built to block people from buying housing. That means across the country, people have to start looking, should we be taxing foreign investors buying up farmland and housing? Should we be putting a closer eye on all of the private equity funds and others who are buying up this housing? So you have to make sure that you are sharing with everybody. And I will say this, it used to be just a few metro areas across the country. Look at the map of Maryland, rural counties, suburban counties, urban counties. Everyone is fed up with their high rent and high cost of housing. And by the way, just because we're focused on the cost of housing, do not forget about the sometimes invisible cries for help from people who are facing foreclosure. Foreclosure is something that is a devastation for an individual, for their neighborhood, and we are seeing signs of foreclosures and evictions continue to tick up. We are clearly in an economy that is slowing down. Unemployment is ticking up, and there are places where people are losing their homes, and we need to make sure that these mortgage servicers are not putting people into foreclosure illegally like they did years ago. Let me just, it's so important that we continue really the ongoing fight on lending. Remember, on monthly bills, we talk about going into the grocery store, the high price of eggs, the high price of food. Don't forget the amount of money people are paying every month just in interest is through the roof. Last year, I don't know if this number is exactly right, I think Americans paid $120 billion just in interest and fees on their credit cards. Credit cards are up to 24, 25, 26%. And you know what's interesting? The Fed has started to cut interest rates. Those credit card rates have not gone down. The auto loans that we see being peddled to people, 13, 14%. This is the type of cost that is really squeezing and draining people. And then to even think about the mortgage rates they are facing, it just is putting the American dream of housing out of reach. In Maryland, I checked this, there are fewer people, significantly fewer people now under 30 buying homes compared to people over 70. There is a total foreclosure of spirit of being able to purchase a home. So I think that when it comes to these loan products, you need to continue to be on the hunt for products that pretend they are not loans, but if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it is one. So keep an eye, and I know big lobbying interests from this workplace payday loan industry. They brand themselves as earned wage access. They have flooded Annapolis and other state capitals to wiggle their way in and to sidestep long-standing law. And the task is much more important, as now with the CFPB, a Justice Department, rather than handing out accountability, they are handing out pardons for politically connected companies. So this is something that has got to be high on the agenda here in Maryland and around the country. So I don't really care. I know you can feel beleaguered by the news. Don't forget, you have a state attorney general, you have a state utility commission, a state insurance commission, and state officials who need to be pushed. You just heard from the delegate. Go to his office, but go to the offices of people who you don't have an invitation from. Knock on their door and tell them what is happening and how we need to fight. So I know that a lot of people are sulking these days, but the time for sulking is over. and the time really to saddle up and fight is now. So remember, keep going, keep fighting, and don't ever surrender. So thank you so much for having me today.
Director Chopra is going to, way too short. Director Chopra is going to take a few questions as well from the audience after that powerful speech, if there are consumer protection issues or other issues you want to raise. We have a mic up here, and I can also just repeat them back if I can hear it. Yes, Chuck.
Many of the issues you worked on at the Bureau, I think consumers will now be facing a regulatory desert where there's hardly any oversight. So we have to push our state regulators to do better. But do you have any thoughts about what we're going to do about things like the digital payment apps when there's really no federal supervision of these companies?
Yeah, I don't want to delude you into thinking that states can cover it all. But that doesn't mean states should watch as it all gets really permeated into our society. Chuck asked about these digital payment apps. Many of you are aware that all of us kind of use, whether it's Venmo or Cash App. We have seen so much fraud being perpetrated, the misuse of our personal data, and here's why we should really be worried about it. The more and more information they have about us and about our payments, that's what's going to create a world of personalized pricing. You've already started to probably see this or notice this, that you see a different price when you go on a website for a particular product, and then you look on your phone and maybe it's different. You're starting to see a world, and I don't know if you followed this controversy involving Delta Airlines. They want to be able to offer dynamic, personalized pricing for flights. That means that if they know you have to get to a funeral quickly, or you need to go to a college or job interview, that they can gouge you. We should live in a world with price tags, and the more and more they know about our payments, the more and more they will target prices to us individually. And I personally think states should just ban that immediately. So it's not going to fix everything, but the problems are going to come, and states really need to draw the line.
Hi, good afternoon. I work for the Maryland Department of Aging. We're very happy to be here and to work with some of your whole team. My question for you is, what should we, as a state agency that's happy to be pushed in the best direction, what should we be paying more attention to with respect to older adults as consumers and all the many forms of harm?
You know, I wish I actually knew more about some of the statistics locally. I can tell you what we've seen in cities and counties across the country. We see everything from predatory home sales. I think you've seen these flyers sometimes in neighborhoods, cash for homes, targeting older people, but also in a world with generative AI, voice cloning, and even video, be able to impersonate someone's face. Individuals who are older adults are going to be the ones getting the calls from people who sound like their child or grandchild, asking them to turn over money. And we have allowed, improperly, banks to simply turn a blind eye when older adults are sending large wire transfers, large cash transactions, and what happens afterward, it is just a bunch of finger pointing. So I think the list, I personally worry about those if we do reach a recession, if there is a stock market correction, dramatic downturn, a lot of people who do have a nest egg may not find much they have left. And so they will be targeted for certain types of home equity products, reverse mortgage products, and all sorts of other schemes. So I would encourage wherever you have enforcement powers or where you ever have the ability to really crack down, it becomes so tempting for state agencies to do a consumer education campaign and declare victory. In the world we live in, that is really the wrong course. You have to be able to confront powerful people who are exploiting people here in Maryland and really do something about it. All right, well, I so appreciate this, and again, I hope each of you today uses the moments. I think there's sessions actually on utilities, on housing, and on debt. Come up with big ideas and really work with Marceline and Economic Action to help see them into reality. So thank you again, and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Director Chopra. Again, you can see why he is the federal champion and why his leadership was so instrumental as he directed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And I will mention, I think, teeing up nicely some of the panels, but also some of the things he mentioned. I know there has been legislation introduced in the past on electronic funds transfers, for example. I know we had other things in around energy rate protection. I know there are concerns around data centers. And so I think one of the things that's encouraging is that Maryland has been starting to look at these issues. I think one of the things we need now is legislative champions and advocates and individual citizens pushing to meet the moment to not just introduce the bills, but to get these passed so that Maryland can be all it can be. And I think on that note, I want to recognize the Legislative Achievement of the Year award, and that is really exemplifying the idea of both defending progress that was being rolled back at the federal level and the art of the possible. And so the award this year is going to Delegate Julie Palakovich Carr and Senator Clarence Lamb, who is unable to be here today. The award is for their work sponsoring and championing the Fair Medical Debt Reporting Act, which prohibits outpatient medical debt from being reported to credit agencies. And just a little data for you, in 2023, 14% of Maryland households, that's about 350,000 households, had unaffordable medical debt they could not pay. And outpatient providers and services are the cause of medical debt for 44% of households in Maryland, while about another 108 hold debt from inpatient hospitals and outpatients. Delegate Palakovich Carr was tenacious and persuasive in moving this legislation forward and defending it against well-funded opposition in Annapolis. Thanks to her efforts and that of Senator Lamb's, Maryland's will not see their credit scores fall because they sought health care for themselves or for a loved one. And so I'm so pleased to present this award to Delegate Palakovich Carr for this Legislative Achievement of the Year.
Well, thank you, Marceline. I very much appreciate the recognition, as I know Senator Lamb does as well. As was stated, this really is a no-brainer of an issue, right? We all need health care, and sometimes it is unaffordable, unfortunately, even for people who have insurance. And you have out-of-pocket costs. Your credit score shouldn't take a ding because of that. This really was a bill that was a few years in the making, and I'll be honest and say that the actions of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, we were following those for a few years. And so there actually was a nationwide rule, even back in January, that protected everyone in this country from having medical debt show up on your credit reports. And unfortunately, the current federal administration rescinded that rule. And it's been challenged in the courts as well. Thankfully, because of the actions of the General Assembly this session, we do have these protections back in place for Marylanders, and I'm really glad that going forward, this is not an issue that we'll have to worry about for residents in our state, but I think it just shows that we need to continue to be vigilant and not take for granted baseline protections that have been put in place at other levels of government, and we need to keep working here in Maryland. Thank you.
Again, it takes strong, effective legislators. It takes strong legal champions as well. And our next award is for the Consumer Advocate of the Year, which goes to Emanwel Manny Turnbull. Manny is committed to justice, to consumer protection, and to providing those in debt with a fresh start. He demonstrates his commitment in myriad ways. He defends consumers in court. He leads the fair debt and credit collection practice at the Holland Law Firm. He wins class action cases. He recently won a decision in Anderson versus Hammerman that stops businesses from hiding behind litigation privilege and found that collection attorneys can be held liable for false statements and attorneys' fees affidavits in collection cases. Manny also testifies frequently in Annapolis, almost every time I ask him to, which is frequent, on legislation related to debt collection, identity theft, and more. He's frequently able to explain complex issues and legal precedents to legislators who are not well-versed in consumer protection laws. I am so happy to present our Consumer Advocate of the Year award to Manny Turnbull. There are a couple awards that did not quite make it, and they're getting resent. So Manny has this.
Well, first let me say what a great honor it is to get this award, represented by these flowers. And second, let me say that as a Brit, I am in no way able to concede that I deserve it, and that what I have achieved is only possible because of a community of consumer advocates and a legacy of many years of consumer advocacy in Maryland and many other places. 400 years ago, there were consumer advocates. They were fighting for millers who mixed chalk with their wheat to be fined and pilloried. They were stopping people speculating in wheat and driving up bread prices. 50 years ago, they were passing the laws that we rely on now, frequently. The Truth in Lending Act, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, all of those alphabet soup of statutes that make it possible to claw back some of the money that dodgy companies take away from ordinary people. And that's what I see consumer advocacy as. Fighting for ordinary people against companies and individuals who are extraordinary in their wealth and power. And it's appropriate, therefore, for me to thank the community at large for what I've been able to do. Some more immediately. Is Philip Robinson here? Well, that's a shame because he wrote an amicus brief in the Anderson case that helped us get that decision. It was even quoted by the appellate court. He got them to say some really great things that are going to help all of you about the importance of consumer rights in Maryland. It's appropriate for me to thank Marceline and all the legislators and advocates who helped get the Maryland Consumer Debt Collection Act to say what it says about the ability of consumers to sue those who wrongfully pursue them for debt. Anything I've done wouldn't have been possible without all of that. I would also say that right now is probably the most important time since I've been part of this community for consumer rights to exist and for all of you advocates to do everything you can. If has been suggested, there might be an economic downturn, that work is going to become much more important as people struggle to keep their homes and their livelihoods and to provide for their families. Though, as the soon-to-be past treasurer of Economic Action Fund, I would like to encourage all those who can to donate their money, their time, their contacts, their willingness to advocate in Annapolis, which is not an easy or always a fun thing to do, but we need you to do it. to this organization and to the consumer advocates community at large. And I'd like to thank you all very much for coming and for supporting this organization and this community.
Literally getting his flowers, but he will be getting the award as well. Our next award, which also has flowers and will soon have their award, is our Community Partnership Award. Again, as we say, it takes a village, and sometimes the hardest work is working locally to meet the needs of our neighbors. And the Community Partnership Award celebrates critical local work. This year, the recipients are Catherine's Family and Youth Services. Catherine's Family and Youth Services was established in the memory of the late Catherine Matthews, grandmother to the founders Shannon Morgan and Valerie Matthews. Catherine's House serves families in Northwest Baltimore City and upholds the belief that no one should lack food, clothing, or the tools they need to live a better life. The organization provides a food and diaper bank, a clothing bank, a back to school drive, and annual holiday giveaways. They also provide referrals to resources for counseling and housing. Our Securing Older Adult Resources program, our SOAR program, works closely with Catherine's Family Services and has talked about all of the great work they do, meeting local needs. My grandmother was also an inspiration to me to give back to my community and to fight for what's right. So I am sure that this legacy would make both the family and the team from Catherine's Family Services so proud. So we're so honored to recognize Catherine's Family and Youth Services for the Community Partnership of the Year Award.
On behalf of Catherine's Family and Youth Service, thank you for honoring us and our work.
Thank you so much. I want to invite our Deputy Director, Jennifer Van Dangle, up to make a few remarks, and then I will close this out.
I'm going to do logistics, right? All right, so I get the fun job of talking logistics. So again, thank you everyone for coming. We are so excited for this energy, for the conversation today. And we really appreciate you taking your time to be with us. There is a lot more food, and we are a little bit ahead of schedule, which is always good news to everyone. So we will be extending this first break so that you have a bit of extra time to grab more food. You can eat it in here. Not all the breakout rooms have tables, so you can plan accordingly. Is your lap going to work for a table holder? So we will start our second panels at 1:35 instead of 1:45, and they will run until 2:50 instead of till 3. So panelists, please be paying attention to that. So again, we'll be starting at 1:35, and then the break will be at 2:50, and we'll move everything else up by 10 minutes as opposed to what's in the program as well. So thank you very much.
And thanks once again to Jennifer, who did the logistics, but also the graphic design, as well as an extremely detailed day of run of show. So we are incredibly grateful to have her on our team, helping make this such a smooth and successful event. So I'm not going to belabor everything you've heard already. Director Chopra sketched out some of the cost of living crisis we're seeing. I will say that in Maryland, we are certainly seeing this on the ground with the tenants we serve, with our older adults, and also with folks who are struggling with housing and fair housing. We are planning a survey and focus groups of both our 2,500 clients each year, as well as other panels, to really have a snapshot of the cost of living crisis in Maryland that will be ready before the General Assembly starts in January. And part of the reason for that is that we know, my master's was in economics, so like I look a lot at like the cost of living crisis and the fact that wages are flat. And we know from calls we get that people are struggling. I think they say now that the survival income to afford a two-bedroom apartment and the basic cost of needs in Maryland is about $84,000. So if you think about that and you think about how many people in our communities make less than $84,000, we know that folks are struggling. Last year when we did our survey, we knew that our lowest income community members were struggling, particularly Black and brown communities that have suffered the scars of redlining for decades and decades that have never healed, and we've never done the reparative policies needed to address those issues. But we were seeing families who were making $150,000 that were struggling. Not that anyone's done anything wrong, wages just haven't increased and we haven't been able to get a handle on bringing costs down. And so we're creating this survey and this report because, you know, in Maryland, we can do more. I think things are very difficult, as we all know, at the national level, but we have a Democratic governor who cares about these issues. We have a state's attorney who cares about civil rights and cares about these issues. We have a majority in the General Assembly. And so we really need to meet this moment with courage and strength and be able to pass an affordability agenda in Maryland, an agenda that allows people to remain housed, remain fed, not have to choose between utilities and medicine, not have to have economic security and fear whether or not they can go to the doctor. These are pretty basic things. We are one of the wealthiest states in the country. We can afford to do this, but it means hard conversations, hard decisions, and hard choices. We know that this is important. We know that this is what people need. There are lots of long-term solutions, but we can certainly backfill what's happened at the federal level and defend progress. And there are also places where we can make progress this year. And so we want all of us to work together in whatever way you're working, whether serving the community, defending clients, passing laws, leading an administration, to make these changes that prioritize these needs. We're working with many of you to do just that. I think we're working with all of you to do just that are in the room, and I'm so happy again to see so many colleagues and partners here. I also want to recognize staff from Delegate Fair's office who are here, who we did not get to recognize earlier. We're working with so many of you to do that, but to be successful, we need funds to fuel our work. On your tables, there are tabletops with a QR code. In Annapolis, we often face highly paid and influential corporate lobbyists. Your support to Economic Action Maryland Fund, which is our C3, is tax deductible and supports our policy and direct service work. Your support to Economic Action Maryland supports our work really building power and letting people know who is voting on an economic justice agenda. We are, again, so pleased. All I can say is I'm pleased to look around the room and see so many people who work in so many different ways on helping vulnerable families. And I'm so proud to work with all of you. And I think we're going to be needing to work together more than ever this year to really address the needs of our communities that need all of us fighting for them in whatever way we are best prepared and able to do so, and then need all of us to come together to push to make sure that this affordability agenda is met. So I want to thank you all, grab a little bit more food, and we're going to start at 1:35, as JBD said. So thank you.